Welcome to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Badass Direct Sales Mastery is a podcast for rock star direct sales moms who are determined to make their business kick ass. Jennie will share her knowledge of effective sales and recruiting techniques, tips to get what you want from your business, and will interview direct sales professionals and leaders from various companies. The interviews will give insight to how these rock stars got to where they are and where they plan to grow in the future. And now, the direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger.
Welcome back to another episode of Badass Direct Sales Mastery. I am your host, your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger, helping you whip your business into shape. Our guest today has an eclectic and unusual background. After 14 years running one of the nation's top chiropractic clinics, he became a sought-after corporate motivational entertainer. He went on to write a best-selling book called UnHypnosis and a series of other critically acclaimed personal growth programs. He now travels the globe sharing insight and wisdom about how to live an inspired life, often incorporating hypnosis into his programs. He's been seen on national television, has been featured in major magazines, and has shared the stage with top business speakers like Jack Canfield and the late Zig Ziglar. That's huge because I got to interview Jack a few months ago, and that was amazing.
Yeah, he's great.
Super cool. And so here to share insights today into the top characteristics of highly successful people, please welcome our best-selling author, international speaker, physician, mindfulness coach, transformational hypnotist, and a super nice guy. And I can vouch for that because we became friends fairly quickly. I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Steve Taubman.
Well, thank you, Jennie. I'm so glad to be here with the original dom of the badass person. This is great. What a wonderful treat to be here with you today.
Oh, well, thank you, Steve. And what's so fun is so you and I ended up on a Zoom speed networking call together. And that's how we first met. But here's what's interesting. When I saw that you were on the call, I got so super excited because I've been quoting your direct sales material for years. I use it in some of my most popular trainings, and I still give credit where credit is due because you have amazing network marketing and direct sales systems to help people be more successful. So I was super excited when we got to meet. But let's tell everybody who don't know who you are. I mean, that's a great bio, but how did you go from being, running a top chiropractic clinic to being in teaching people how to, unconsciously or subconsciously break these ties that hold them where they are and are keeping them from the success that they desire?
It's been an interesting journey, I will say that. Starting out in chiropractic, we already come from a holistic approach to health in chiropractic. And the distinction of that is that, we're not trying to put things into you to make you healthier, taking drugs and whatnot, or cut things out of you, but rather to find the interference to the natural communication within your body.
Mm-hmm.
So as a chiropractor, my job was to remove physical obstacles to health. And so those usually come in the form of what chiropractors call subluxations or misalignments of the spine. And when you remove those subluxations, that is when you allow the nervous system to flow smoothly, then the body gets healthier and people eliminate pain and all sorts of other maladies. Later, when I started doing the work I do now, it became very clear that I was still doing essentially the same thing, but instead of doing it with the body, I was doing it with the mind.
Mm.
So again, what is it that keeps some people stuck? What is it that keeps some people from becoming the successes that they dream of being? We all want something. We all have a hope, a dream, a desire, somewhere we want to go. And for some people, that's a direct journey. For most people, it's a little bit of an up and down journey. And for some of us, it's you hit a wall and you bounce all the way back to where you started, and you never seem to get out of the box you're stuck in. And that's very much like the chiropractic principle. What is the obstacle? What's the block? That next step from occurring. And inevitably, that block happens between your ears. It's almost never an external. It's almost never a circumstantial thing. And despite what a lot of people will tell you, it's not the town you live in or the fact that your particular whatever it is that you're selling is oversaturating the market. It's almost never that, because the reality is that there are people who get very successful in crowded marketplaces with products that are already popular. And what is it that they're doing that other people aren't doing? And we know what they're doing that other people aren't doing. They're taking action.
Mm-hmm.
But what we don't necessarily talk about, and this is my passion, is why aren't they doing it? What's behind it? Let's step back a few steps and see if we can figure that part out. And that's been my passion for the last several years, is what is it that's going on at the deepest subconscious level of our mind that has us sabotaging ourselves, that has us talking ourselves out of success, that has us remaining small, not letting ourselves shine our light, fear of rejection and the sort. So, fear and anxiety and a very tightly held belief system about ourselves keeps us from going where we want to go. So how do we change it? What do we do to change that? And does it really work? Is it really possible to change it? If I grew up in a dysfunctional family and my parents were bad parents, or didn't get along with each other, and I only saw bad relationships, or if I was bullied as a child, can I still succeed? Can I overcome the programming that I got from that particular upbringing? And luckily, the answer is yes. If it weren't a yes, then I wouldn't be here talking to you today. So everything I'm talking about comes from my own personal experience and then expanded outward to include others, because as a philosopher, which is what I identify as, I believe that we need to be thinking about thinking. Be thinking about how our thinking works. What is it that we're saying to ourselves that we're not questioning? What are our blind spots? And once we start identifying them and have the courage to stand in the face of our limitations, we can break through them. But one of the cardinal tools we need is courage, because it's not comfortable to change.
No. Oh gosh, no. It's one of the analogies I talk about, and I think I've addressed it on the podcast before once or twice, is when we go through those types of changes, it's very much like what a butterfly goes through. And if you've ever really looked at what happens from caterpillar to butterfly, it sounds incredibly painful because the caterpillar goes into this cocoon. Guys, if you don't know the science behind this, it's amazing. They completely like melt into this like goo and then change themselves into the butterfly. That's why the butterfly looks nothing like a caterpillar. What went in came out different. And it's that gooey part that is painful and hard. And for those of us who are who've been through that transition before, it's incredibly weird and disorienting to go from what we were before and be in the middle of that. And it changes hard.
What a fantastic visual. Oh my goodness. I love that. And, think about, like, there's got to be a caterpillar somewhere saying, no, thanks, I'll just stay out here. It just sounds way too hard. I don't want to go through that melting process, but we have to, we have to move toward our discomfort, toward our pain, not just to torture ourselves, but comfortable in the faith that transformation is possible. And I've got some interesting examples of that.
Uh-huh.
One of the metaphors that I use, I remember years ago, I was at Disney World. I was performing at a place in Epcot or in that area, and I thought, well, I have a little time on my hands, so I'm going to Epcot Center. I'd never been before, and I did all the fun things. It's funny, nowadays. This was several years ago, and they still had, I don't know if they still do, but they had that big globy thing in the middle.
Uh-huh.
You go up a train in it. And I remember you get up to a certain point and there'd be this very futuristic thing about families talking to each other on TVs. Like, ooh, so now it's like it would have to be more a future world than past world, or past world than future world. But anyway, in the evenings, they had this show that they would do, and it was light projected onto a very large fountain. So this wall of water would shoot up from a fountain, and it created a wall that they would project lights onto, and then they would project imagery onto it, kind of like a movie, as if the wall of water were a screen. And I remember one of the things they showed was an excerpt from Fantasia. It was
Ooh.
the Sorcerer's Apprentice with Mickey Mouse and the sorcerer, and it was very loud and very scary. And there were kids crying and wanting to run away. And I thought, this is fascinating, because if rather than running away, they were to walk towards it, they would find that it was made up of droplets of water. It was penetrable, right? And you could literally walk right through it and come out the other side, and you'd be fine. So all the things that were scaring them were merely projections, right? And that's true for us as well. All the things that are scaring you are projections from your mental computer, from your mental projector, onto this wall of water that you're running away from, when in fact, if you move towards it, you find out that you come out the other side. And so as soon as you start taking those steps in the direction of your fear and move through the other side, you realize, wow, I thought it was going to be an endless state of pain and difficulty, when in reality, it just took a little oomph, just a little, it's one step further, one more step, and you're out the other side of it. So it's a remarkable thing to see happen. And my first book, we talk about, the book is called UnHypnosis, and we talk about the fact that we go through life kind of hypnotized, kind of programmed,
Mm-hmm.
and we have someplace we want to go, or a goal we want to accomplish, and then we hit our invisible walls, right? The things that we can't let ourselves go through. And the moment we wake up from the fact that this is just an illusion, off we go.
Oh, yeah. I first of all absolutely love that metaphor of the Disney laser light show, because for years and years and years, I'm not somebody who has an issue with anxiety. I'm too ADD to focus on something for that long to let it bother me. Or at least that's what I tell myself.
If you only had time, you'd be miserable.
I know. It's like, oh man, thank goodness for my ADD, because it doesn't mean that I don't think about the bad stuff, but my
Yeah.
brain just go, thank goodness for ADD. It just moves on to the next thing, right? And so for years, I never understood anxiety until someone explained it to me as anxiety is your imagination on overload,
Yeah.
but it's just focusing on all the bad things that can happen. If you can take someone who's going through anxiety and start asking them and validating, yes, that's a possibility. Right. Totally get that. And what else is a possibility? And what else? Until they start listing better and better options,
Mhm.
retraining their imagination to do that. But I'm guessing that your version is a little bit faster than mine.
The version is faster because most people who experience anxiety have what's called amygdala anxiety, which means it's a deep in their kind of deep in the brainstem, where it's a feeling, it's a sensation that they're very uncomfortable with. And so that feeling or that sensation might trigger all of those futuristic thoughts that create, even more anxiety. It becomes a vicious cycle. We basically scare our amygdala. So
Oh,
one approach is that we try to, like refocus that voice or reframe that voice to be more positive. So you're not at least scaring your amygdala. And the other is learning how to have more tolerance for that feeling, the sensation of anxiety.
mm-hmm.
Because when you feel the sensation of it and you jump right into your head and into your futurizing, you're just sustaining the cycle. So what I teach people how to do is how to sort of sit in the midst of it. It's, like sitting in the eye, being the eye in the calm in the eye of the storm. So you see it all swirling around you, but there's this quiet, centered observer in the midst of it all. And it's a technique. It's a couple of techniques that work well together. And when people learn how to do that, they feel more powerful. They don't feel like they're being pulled by the things that used to pull them, or the things that used to cause them to be afraid.
Mm.
Oh God, I can't go up and talk to that stranger at Starbucks or whatever that is. That's just a story you're telling yourself, but because you've got a feeling associated with it, it feels real. That's why
Right.
merely talking about it doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to learn to, what we say is, get out of your head and into your body. To
Mm.
enhance your tolerance for the feelings of fear, anxiety, self-recrimination, shame. Those feelings, for somebody who's had them a long time, feel like reality. And they feel like there's nothing to you other than those feelings. But the reality is that there's a part of you that can quietly, calmly observe those feelings and not become them, not be run by them. And that's the magic of the work that we do.
I think that's phenomenal. And, I think I'm guessing that there are some pretty powerful stories of people that you've worked with who couldn't do X, Y, or Z before working with you. And after working with you, experienced some what seemed to be miraculous changes and got some amazing benefits. Are you willing and or able to share any of those? Obviously protecting the innocent, but
Right, right. Well, for my own personal sake, I always try to get video testimonials from people after I've done the work because, like anybody else, I go through my downtimes and I feel, oh, what's the point? I'm not doing anything in the world. And then I have to go back and watch like 100 videos about what I've done to accomplish, to help people out. And I'm like, okay, good. I guess, that's just a part of my brain that hasn't completely relieved. And so I keep on saying, don't believe everything you think.
right.
Sometimes it's those externals that remind us. So for me, I just recently went back and watched a woman by the name of Jan. I'm not going to mention any last names, but
Sure.
Jan was one of the in the trenches direct sellers working with one of the bigger companies, and just found the whole thing so frustrating, so scary and exhausting that she kept hitting this glass ceiling. And it didn't take very long before she hit it, because as soon as she'd take any kind of action, the anxiety would be profound. And I got her started with we've got an audio program called UnHypnosis for network marketers and direct sellers. And it's designed to implant positive messages in the subconscious mind.
Mm.
So what people do with this is they'll listen to it usually once or twice a day for a minimum of 21 days. And statistically, we see about a 29 to 30% increase in productivity in that 21-day period. So it's a very powerful, very potent process. And in her case, and I've got this video on my website, she's talking about how, having done this program, she found it just became fun and delightful to talk to people and approach people, and it became effortless. And then she's seeing her numbers climbing, and she started becoming a leader. And that always impresses me, when somebody's not just doing the work themselves, but they're willing to take on a leadership role and coach their downline. And that's what she was doing. And it was just so fun to see that because of her removing these mental blockages, she was able to not just do the work, but to do it in an enjoyable way, and to teach other people to do it. So that's a pebble in the pond. That's somebody affecting many people.
Yeah, that ripple effect is so incredibly powerful, right? Because, just me to you, when you're watching those videos, knowing that you've made the impact on her life, and those ripples are going out to everyone that she works with. And I've said many times on the show here with some of my other guests, my part of the reason that I choose to work specifically with direct sales moms for as a majority of my clients is because I know when you work with a mom, you're not just having an impact on mom. You're having an impact on her significant other, on her siblings, on her children, on her friends, on her coworkers, if she's still working a full-time or part-time job, because whatever she learns, she puts into play everywhere. Moms are magical beings that go, okay, we take $1 and stretch it into 5, right? So
Right.
if I'm gonna learn this amazing thing for my business, I'm gonna use it with my kids. I'm gonna use it with my spouse. I'm gonna use it with my coworkers. Like, they get better in all those areas. So those impacts do ripple out that way. So I can definitely see that as you're watching those those testimonials that you've got, keeping in mind all those other ripples, all those other people that have been impacted by what you're doing is
Yeah.
huge. I mean, at the beginning of the show, I talked about how your work is something that I quote all the time. And so the ripple effect, just from the number of people that I train using your information going out into the world, it's creating multiple ripple effects there.
It's very gratifying. It's very gratifying. It really is. You start with, every one of us, I think we start with our own personal challenges, and we've got to do the best we can to figure out how to move past them. And generally speaking, I think that has to do with increasing our self-esteem, our sense of personal power, diminishing our sense of seriousness and
Mm-hmm.
oh my God, the consequences are so big.
Yeah.
And then getting to the point where, where you're just moving through life with greater ease. And when you're moving through life with greater ease, that's contagious. And you
Yeah.
say, for mom, it's contagious to some very important people, like a whole new generation.
Mm.
And, you spot those people, when you're coming into contact with somebody who's done their work.
Yeah.
And if I could sit down with everybody and get the opportunity to help them break through their fear and their sense of self-reproach and come to that place of just feeling good
Yeah.
and that they have a contribution to make, what a great thing that is.
Absolutely. And to rewind just a smidge to what you were saying about increasing their self-esteem, their belief in what they can do. I think part of it too, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think part of it too is people don't trust their own strength. They
Yeah.
they don't have a belief in how strong they are to be able to handle the situations that don't fall within what they think should be happening.
Yeah. We have to realize, and this goes back to something I said a little bit earlier, we have to realize that we are our own harshest critics.
Mm.
We tend to diminish the value of what we have to offer. We diminish our strength. And that's kind of a human condition. We all tend to do it. The question is, can you find a place that you can stand from which you can see yourself doing that and know it's not true? Right? It's like, for example, a personal example, I can't stand listening to myself on tape. More like the way if I hardly ever go back and listen to, things I've done. And, yet I teach people you should be making videos all the time, doing testimonials, just really making use of video as a wonderful tool. And how many people say the same thing to me? They'll say, I don't like the way I sound, or I don't like the way I look. And you hear that all the time. And I say, you know what? You don't have to freaking watch it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for you, it's for others. Because as much as I may not like the sound of my voice, or I may not like the way I look, there are a lot of people who do like the sound of my voice and the way I look. And I'm willing to accept that I could be wrong,
I
right?
love that.
So we
Oh,
could all do that. We could all say, okay, I'm going to sit here making a video and teaching my team something and thinking that I don't look good, but having a place that I'm standing and saying, oh, there I go, thinking I don't look good, but it's not true. And we
mm-hmm.
have to stop being so arrogant about our views of ourselves, right?
Yep.
It's just not true. It's just a programming. And again, it's like we come into contact with our programming, and we at that moment have to decide, am I willing to wake up? Am I willing to walk through that spray of water and come out the other side and see something bigger?
Yeah.
I used to fly airplanes. I'm a private pilot, and I used to have a plane. And this still happens to this day, even though I used to fly all the time. If it's a cloudy day, you feel like it's cloudy everywhere in the world. Right? Right? You know that feeling? It's like, oh, it's a dismal day, and like you assume the whole world is dismal on this day. If you're a pilot, you could get in the plane and fly maybe 3,500 feet up and pop out the top of the clouds, and it's a beautiful blue sky day. Right? It's on the other side of the clouds, and it's the same thing with our mood. There's a place you can get to on the other side of your mood if you only make the effort.
Oh, God, I love that. I love that. That reminds me, I just recently saw something. It was probably on Facebook. Somebody had this really great analogy where they said, okay, how many of you have ever seen like the most beautiful sunset ever? And you grab your phone, you take a picture of it, and you look at the picture, and it's a beautiful picture, but it still doesn't compare to what you saw in person, right? Can we begin to believe that maybe that's true for us?
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, that was like goosebumpy, spine tingly when I got to the end of that little phrase there, that maybe that's true for us when we take that picture of ourselves, or somebody takes a picture of us and we criticize ourselves and go, oh, that, oh, I look horrible, whatever. But yet, isn't there also the possibility that we were the most beautiful things somebody had ever seen, and the picture just can't possibly capture us?
Especially with the lens we're using on ourselves.
Yes. Oh, that makes it even better. Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Because you and I both speak the NLP language. So we're all like lens filters. Yes.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly what we're dealing with. It's like, how are you, how are you filtering the reality? And you just have to assume you're doing it wrong. We're not great advocates for ourselves. We're not, neutral viewers of our own experience.
Mhm.
So we know that. Stop believing it. It's
Yeah.
just because, for other people, right? I could see somebody who I see beauty in and they don't see beauty in themselves. So why can't that be true for me too?
Mm, super powerful. Oh my gosh, I love this. So,
Mm.
Steve, you and I are going to have to get back together on another episode and continue talking because I know you and I could talk and go like even deeper on all of this. But for people who have been listening and they love what you have to say and they are looking at changing how they feel about themselves, how they see, or they want to get past those mental blocks, how would you like one of our badass crew listeners to reach out to you?
Well, we have choices. And I think what I'm going to encourage people to do to start with is, you'll be posting this link because it's hard to say and spell, but it's sociotap.com/Dr. Steve. And you'll put it up so we don't have to explain where the capital letters and the small letters are. They could just
Yep,
click the link. But
absolutely.
but what that is it's a series of buttons to all of my websites, and several of them have free offers. One of them is an actual hypnotic recording that you can just listen to that helps to empower you. It's just a short hypnotic recording, kind of like a small piece of what this program is. Another one is if, let's say, you're somebody who's struggling with anxiety or chronic pain, there are places you can go to reach me in that regard, or for coaching. I mean, it's kind of a one-stop shopping place to go. Now, the other thing you could do is if you're interested in taking advantage of this program, the UnHypnosis for Direct Sellers program, we've knocked the price down to $69 for that, and it's on my regular website, but you have to throw in the word resources. So it's stevetaubman.com/resources, and it's one of the offerings on there. So we'll put those links up for you guys, and
Mhm.
you'll be able to get to what you need. But I am available, I am reachable, and I've years and years ago I had an experience where I was studying the work of Ram Dass. Ram Dass is a great
Yeah.
spiritual teacher, and I was going through a really uneasy time in my life, and I needed some guidance. And I thought, well, if I could send a letter to Ram Dass, and if he would like maybe respond to the letter, would that be amazing? And so I called up the Seva Foundation, which was one of his pet charities, and asked how I would get in touch with him. They gave me a phone number, so I figured I'm going to call his office and try to set it up. So I called this number they gave me, and I got his answering machine, personal answering machine. Hi, this is Ram Dass. I'm not here right now. Leave a message. And I was like stumbling over my words because I couldn't believe I could reach this guy on phone. So I was like, I'm sorry, I'm calling you at home, but I'm just going through something right now. I thought you might be somebody that could have some insight or wisdom for me, but anyway, I'm just going to leave a message for no reason because nothing's going to happen. And about 3 or 4 nights later, the phone rang like in the evening, and I hear a voice. He says, "Is this Steve?" I say, "Yeah. Hey, this is Ram Dass. What's up?" And we talked for an hour, and he was amazing and really, really, as he is, wise and wonderful and funny. And at the end of the call, I said to him, I said, I got to ask you, I didn't expect I was going to be able to reach you. I mean, you're an internationally known spiritual teacher. People are always clamoring for your time and attention. How did I reach you? He says, well, he said, I realized at one point in my spiritual path that, I've been doing this work, and in a way I feel like I'm sort of protected, like I've got this like light around me that sort of keeps the wrong people from reaching me.
Mm.
Well, he said, so if somebody reaches me, it means they were supposed to. So who am I to filter the calls? God's doing it for me.
I love that.
Ever since he said that, I said, I'm going to take that approach. And I've like literally given my cell phone number on, like I did it at the Ambit Energy conference in front of 8,000 people.
Oh, wow.
And, I was not overwhelmed. It was, people got in touch. Some people got in touch. Some people just wrote and, to say they enjoyed the talk. But so far to this day, I don't feel like anybody has really abused the privilege. Because
Right.
again, those people who are not ready to have that conversation with me are not going to reach out to me.
Right.
And so I feel I'm very happy to be available to the people who I'm supposed to be available to.
Ah, that is beautiful, Steve. And that's exactly how we ended up getting in
Right.
touch with each other.
Exactly.
Because, you had that light and I was like, oh my gosh, that's Steve Taubman. Holy cow. It never occurred to me to just reach out and say, hey, I've been quoting your stuff. So when I met you, I immediately chatted you and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been quoting your stuff.
And how could I feel anything other than honored by that? That's beautiful. I really appreciate it. And you're so articulate yourself that, that I know you're saying you're passing it along in a very powerful way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. I so appreciate that. And badass crew, you know how this goes. Dr. Steve, said we're going to put this in the show notes. Absolutely. If you want to reach out to Dr. Steve and check out some of the opportunities that he has, many of them are free resources. Some of them involve a little bit of investment. And being that this is the Badass Direct Sales Mastery BDSM podcast, I totally love that the pricing on your UnHypnosis for direct sales is $69. That's hilarious. It's so perfect. It's great. Oh, guys, I didn't even plan it. That's the price that's on his website. You can't make this stuff up. I love it. So please go to hissociatap.com/Dr. Steve. And yes, capitalization does matter. So just grab the show notes. For those of you who are regular listeners, you know the process. For those of you who are maybe listening to for the very first time, I'm assuming you're on your cell phone listening to this podcast. Click on the episode and just scroll up a little bit, depending on your podcast provider. And the notes should be right there, either right under our podcast picture, or maybe even in some cases right above it. Just open up the show notes to see more, and you'll see all of Dr. Steve's contact links. So you can reach out to him, connect with him on all of the social media platforms where he has a place to be. Yeah, presence. There we go. My brain just quit working on that one word there. Wherever he has a great presence, you can connect with him, and also link into some of his really great options that he has, both free and low investment. Because let me tell you guys, if you invest that $69 in a hypnosis program that's going to help you get past those blocks, you will make that money back immediately. Because my experience, I've been through hypnosis before. For any of you who've not been through hypnosis, for me, my experience has been immediate results. And I'm not kidding. My hypnosis happened to be a hypnosis around a surgery that I was having. And the pain was literally gone by the end of the hypnosis session. It's amazing how powerful your mind is, people, both for good and for bad. So if you can have Dr. Steve helping talk you past those blocks through a really powerful format like his UnHypnosis program, do it. Don't even think about it. Just click it, do it. Don't let fear hold you back from what he can help you to achieve. Because the point of us having this podcast, the point of Dr. Steve and I having this conversation here for you guys, if you're hearing this now, it's a sign from the universe, from God, whomever you believe in, that this is meant for you. This is meant for you. You're here. So you were meant to hear this. So Dr. Steve, thank you for your time.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jen.
Absolutely. I love having you here. And like I said, we're going to have you back because you just have too much good stuff. We can't stop at just UnHypnosis, because I know there's more. God, and I want to get into the C's of sponsoring. Because that's the stuff I quote in my training. And heck, why not just put it out here for the world? Because I'm a big believer. I can't give away too much, because again, the right people, I love that thing, the light, protective light thing. The right people will come to us no matter what. So let's make that happen. So thanks again, Dr. Steve.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Absolutely. So badass crew, thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned because there's another badass episode on its way.
Thanks for listening to the Badass Direct Sales Mastery Podcast with your direct sales dom, Jennie Bellinger. Why are you waiting to go to badassdirectsalesmastery.com? Don't make the dom get her whip. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to share it with another rock star that you know in direct sales after you subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any future episodes. You can also check out the show notes for links and any contact information mentioned in today's episode. We'll see you next time.